So today I am going to cover triggers. Okay. So what is meant by trigger? Trigger is nothing but whenever an event occurs, uh, whatever the operations you are asked for the trigger to perform on the particular event, that operations will be performed. Let's say you have a table. Yeah, give me a minute. Yeah, I can connect my pad. Yeah. So let's say you have a table. Hmm? Whenever someone inserts some data into the table, okay, my scenario is that I want to see which user ID inserted, which user ID updated. Okay, so let's say I've inserted one record 101A. What, so in the table you can't store the user ID, you can't store the time, just you'll have the user ID and name. This is a user ID and this is a username. So now here what I want is that whenever any user or someone adds data to this table, I want to log them. Logging. So what I want, whenever any user adds the data, so what I want to is that I want to insert in a separate table the same details, user ID, username, and next uh, username and which system user has been modified the data. Okay, modified by date. Okay, and if you want any column, you can give you can give all the columns here. Okay, whatever the information you want to capture, you can capture. So trigger is nothing but it executes when an event occurs. Events means insert is an event, update is an event, okay, delete is an event. Okay, these are all the events. So whenever a certain event occurs, the trigger will execute on a table. Okay, you will create a trigger on a table whenever, and in that trigger you will write some code. Okay, in the trigger you will write some code. And so let's say you have created a trigger for insert and you have written some code for insert. Whenever an insert operation occurs on the table, this code will execute. Are you able to get my point, Shilpa? Okay, so now triggers are of two types. Okay, trigger executes whenever an event occurs. Triggers are of two types now. You can call for, after, both are same. Next you got instead of, instead. Okay, for, after, both are same, for or after, instead of. So here what happens, what is a for and after trigger and instead of trigger is it? Let's say I have a table and I have created trigger on the table. Okay, I have created trigger on the table. Let's say I have created trigger for insert operation, for insert. What happens whenever an insert operation occurs? This is a trigger type is for, and this is for the insert operation. So whenever and I've written some code here. Whenever an insert operations happens on the table, first the data will be inserted, then the trigger will fire, and whatever the data you have in the table, whatever the code you add for the trigger, that code will execute. That is for or after, both are same. For or after, both are same. What is meant by instead of? Instead of means, let's say I have created instead of insert. Then what happens? Whenever I perform operation on a table, let's say I have inserted data on a table. First, the data will not be inserted. Okay, yeah, I'll explain you. So, trigger is nothing but it fires when an event occurs, or it executes when an event occurs. Event is nothing but insert, delete, update. Okay, so now based on the events, that you can perform two types of trigger operations. One is for the for and the other is for the after. So what happens is that in the trigger you will write some code and you will create the trigger on a table. You will create a trigger on a table and you will write some code. Based on the trigger type, if it is for trigger, let's say it is a trigger type is for and the event is insert, then what happens, you will be inserting the data into the table and the record will be inserted in the table. After record got inserted, then the trigger will fire. So whatever the code you have written in the trigger, the code will execute. That is for. Next, instead of. Instead of is nothing but, so let's say I have created instead of insert trigger. So what happens is that first, let's say you have inserted data into the table. So first the data will not be inserted into the table. Before that, this trigger code will execute. That's it. If you write instead of insert, instead of inserting data into the table, that trigger will execute. That's it. Are you able to get my point? So now I am going to show few examples on the trigger. Okay. So let's say I have two tables. Okay. Yeah, I am starting the management studio. I'll connect to SQL class. Okay. So I have created a table. Okay. I create a table called test trg. This is for trigger. I'll have the trigger ID as integer and name as varchar. Okay, varchar of 10. Now I'll insert some values into the table. Insert. So before inserting, what I am going to do, I am going to create a trigger. Okay. So what I am going to do is that I'm going to I'm going to create a table. Now I'm going to create trigger on the table. So how to create a trigger? As I said, whenever you create, if you want to create a table, you are writing a create is a basic syntax. After that, you are giving the object type, next the object name. Same with the trigger also. Create, okay, trigger, okay. Next you will give the trigger name. So general I will give trg underscore table name test trg. Okay. This is for the, let's say I do for the insert. Done. Then next next I need to give the table name on. It is a test trg for insert. Okay. Inside the insert, you can write whatever the code you want, you can write as. So I forgot to mention one thing. In the triggers, I've explained here, right? Yeah, for and after. I've explained, right? So basically, whenever this code executes, right? In that code, in the trigger, whatever code you write, by default, you can use two tables. The two tables are automatically created by system. The two tables are automatically created by system, and you can use the two tables only in the trigger only. The two tables are nothing but the magic tables. Okay. So the two tables are, one is a inserted and one is a updated. Okay. So what is meant by inserted and updated is that whenever you insert the data into the table, automatically the data will be inserted in the trigger into this table. By default, the data will be also be available in this table. So in the trigger, you can call this table, which whatever the records you inserted at that particular point of time, that records will be automatically inserted into this table. So if you want to know which records got inserted, you can directly call this table, which says these are the records inserted. If you delete any records, that records will be stored in the deleted. Sorry, I written it is updated, so it is a deleted. Okay, deleted table, inserted and deleted. So whenever you delete some records, that records will be stored in the deleted table. If you want, you can call it in a trigger. You can call that table in the trigger. Okay. So now inserted and deleted. So if you update some record, let's say I updated name ABC to BCD, then ABC is a old. It is a kind of deleted. You are updating, right? Old data is been removed. Nothing but it has been deleted. So old data will be stored in deleted. New data will be stored in the inserted. Okay, that's it. So in the trigger code, you can call these two tables to get the information on the inserted records, updated records, or deleted records. Okay, I'll show you one example. First, we'll go with the basic stuff, and after that, I'll show an example. So, or else I'll create a trigger for update. That will be good because I can use the two operations. Okay, for update. Then what I'll do, I'll go to as, then I'll select star from. Okay, select the star from inserted. By default, you can take the tables. Select star from updated. Just I am selecting the data. That's it. So here, along with this, I'll add one column called updated or old record as type. Next, here also I'll give the type as new because sorry, updated will have the old record. This will have the inserted will have the new record, right? When I updated the data. So here I'll go with the old as type. Okay, now I have created the trigger. Done. Go. Done. Why is showing updated? Sorry. Again I deleted. Okay, deleted. Okay. So now I'll execute the trigger. I'll execute it. Done. What I'll do, I'll insert some data into the above table. Insert into temp. Oh, sorry. Test trg. Okay. Values. It has a column name id comma name as a. Okay. I'll add that. Now I'll insert the value. When I insert, nothing will happen because insert because you have created trigger for update. Now I'll update the data. Update test trg set name equal to b where id equal to 1. This is what I give. Now update it. Say when I update it, what happens? The record will be updated in the table first, and after that the trigger will execute. In this trigger, what I am doing, I am calling from inserted. As I said, whenever you do updated and deleted, automatically that records will be inserted in these two magic tables, and this two you can call these two magic tables only in trigger. If I go out of trigger, if I go to the other window, or if I try to call the two tables like this, select star from inserted, then it will throw an invalid object name. But in the trigger, you can it's only applicable for trigger. These magic tables you can only use for the trigger. Okay. Now I update the data. So what happens? First, this record will be updated in the table. Next, later on, this trigger will execute. This is because I have created the trigger for update, right? So first, the data is updated. Next, this trigger will execute. In this trigger, what we are doing, we are calling the, as I said, whenever you update, the old record will be there in the deleted and the new record will be there in the inserted. So I'll get the new record from the inserted table and doing select and doing select. So the two records will be shown displayed to me in the result set. Now when I update it, see now. See, I updated it, but by default the data will be updated in the table. At the same time, I got the data here. See, B. I updated name to B. What is the old is A. So you got that A here as a old, new as B. See here. Are you able to get my point? Now what I'm going to do is that. So Kranti, are you able to understand this? When did you join? Yes, go ahead. No, whatever code you want to write, you can write it. Whatever code you want, you can write it in a trigger. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, I'll explain you Kranti one again. So basically here on this one, trigger means whenever event occurs, right? Whenever any event occurs, the trigger is going to execute. Trigger fires when an event occurs. Okay? Trigger fires when event occurs. When an event occurs. Okay? So triggers are of two types. The events example for the events is that insert, update, delete. Okay, so here based on this, now there are two types of triggers: for, after, both are same. Next, instead trigger. So let's say always you are going to create triggers on the table, and you are going to create on triggers on the database also, but I'm explaining about the tables. Okay, you'll create some triggers on the tables. So how it looks, so there will be a table, and you will create a trigger on the table. Always trigger can't execute on its own. It should be created on some other object where whenever an event occurs to that object, this trigger will automatically execute. Okay, so now here I have a trigger, I have a table. On the table I have created trigger. Let's say if you created a trigger for the trigger, if you create a for type trigger type for, if you create this, what happens? First, that event, if you create a trigger for update or for insert, what happens? First, that action will be happening on the table. First, that action will execute on the table. After that, whatever the code you have written in the trigger, that code will execute. That is for. Next, instead means what happens? If you write some code, if you have written some code, right? Let's say you have to instead of insert. What happens? When you try to insert the data in the table, the data will not be inserted. Instead of inserting, the trigger will fire. The trigger will execute. So for the for, first the data is inserted and the next trigger is executed. But for instead, the data is not inserted. It will only the trigger is executed. That's it. Instead of inserting the data, the trigger will execute. So in the triggers, so whenever, let's say you updated table, you inserted data table, or you deleted the table, and what you want is that you want to see like which records got deleted, which records got updated, which record got inserted in the trigger. If you want to see that records in the trigger, what happens? Basically, the trigger will have magic tables. Okay, the trigger will have magic tables by default, that are system generated. The triggers will have two types of magic tables. One is a deleted and other one is a inserted. So by default, the trigger will have the two magic tables. So when you create a trigger for insert, okay, whenever you insert the data, you can get that inserted, whichever records you inserted in the table, by default, the same records will be available in the inserted magic table. If you delete the records, thus whatever the records you are seen, that records will be there in the deleted. If you see something with the update, then update means the old value. Let's say I have updated from A to B. The A value will be there in the deleted and B value will be there in the inserted. Okay, that all values you can get it. You can pull from the trigger, from this two. Inside the trigger you can get the data, because trigger is a different, right? So how can you know which records got inserted, which record got updated? So by default, that records will be available in the trigger. By default, that records will be available in the trigger. Are you able to get my point, Kranti? So now the same scenario. So what we did is that we created one table. Okay. On the table, I have created a trigger for update. So I have created trigger, create, object type is trigger and the name. Then afterwards, because always the trigger is created on some object, right? So now I'm creating on the table. Okay, basically you will be creating a triggers on table. Okay, and then when you go inside, you will be creating triggers on database also, but nothing to worry about that. Okay, so you create a trigger on a table. And what type of trigger are you creating for? For what action? What is the action type here? You are creating a trigger type for, and the action type is update. Okay, this is what I am creating. So in that action type, what I said, whenever I update it, as I said, the old record will be there in the deleted table, and the new record will be there in the inserted. So I am taking all the records from inserted, and I am taking all the records from the deleted. So I've created this trigger. So what I'm doing here now, I've inserted data. Next, I have updated the data. Okay, since I updated from B to B, I got it. Now I'll update as because now the data in the table is B. Okay, since I updated last time, select star from test trg. I'll execute this. See, you got the data as B. So now I will update to C. So what happens? First, this when I execute this query, it is going to update that in the table. It will update the table. After that, this trigger will execute. In the trigger, as I said, the old value in new value will be there in the inserted table. Old value will be there in the deleted, and you are calling that. You are using the select query in the trigger. So basically, this trigger will execute. In the trigger, you are using that code. So now you will get the record from the inserted. You will get the record from the deleted, shown in the results pane. Now you see it here. So just I'll update it from C. Now you'll get one record as deleted, one record as updated. So old B is the old one, new is the C1. That's it. So now are you able to get up now this one? Hello? Kranti? Okay. So now I'll modify the trigger. So basically I can select this. Now what I want is that whenever some user updates or deletes the data from the whenever some user updates the data from this table, updates the data to this table, what I want is that I want to capture that in an audit file. So what I'll do, I'll create an audit file here. Okay, I'll create an audit file, the same structure, but I'll name it as a underscore log. I'll name it as a log file. It will log all the records. Then next I'll write user name as varchar 50 or 100. Then next I'll have the date. Okay, or action date. Action date and date as get date type. It is a varchar. Next, this is action date. Next I will have action type. Varchar of 20. Okay, so what I want is that I want to have the record, okay, and action type. If it is a deleted, I want to capture action type as deleted. If it's updated, for updated I will have two records, old record and new record. So old one I will write as update old, and the new one I will write as update new. And I will also capture which user ID is doing that. Next I will also capture the action date. So this is a table I will create now. So basically, if you want to know the user ID, which user is currently on the system, I can write select @ sorry, I think there's a function user, yeah, user ID. Okay, yeah. Oh, user ID. Okay, username, I think then, yeah. Okay, Alex, see. Okay, username or sysuser. I'll always confuse with sys. Yeah, system user. Okay. Yeah. Okay. When I use a system user, I'll get which system is currently on the on this server. Okay, which user is on this system. So you can see that username. So now what I'll do, okay, in the trigger, whenever there is an update, I'll insert the data into these tables. I'll insert the data into the table. Okay. So what I can do is that first I'll write an insert query, or else first I'll try to get the data from this table. So you'll get the select ID, comma, name, comma, sys user, comma, get date, action date is get date. Then this is for the insert, right? So I write update underscore new, okay, as type. So now this is the information I got. Now I'll insert the data into the table. Insert into test test error log, then ID, comma, name, comma, username, comma, action date, comma, action type. That's it. Now I'm inserting the data from this. Next I'll do the same thing with the other table also. Also I can copy the same query, paste it here. Here I'll name the action type as update old. Then I'll get this data from the deleted data table. That's it. Okay, I'm just altering the existing trigger. So just instead of creating, because this trigger already exists, right? If I want to alter, just I'll do alter command. That's it. The trigger will be updated with the latest code. Now I'll go here. I'll execute the trigger. That's it. Done. Good. The trigger will be executed now. Now see, what data do you have in the test trigger? You have the data as C. Now I'll update the record to D. When I update it, what happens? Okay. Generally, whenever you update one record, you will get only one row affected. Now you are getting 3 rows affected. See here, 3 rows affected. Means one row is for your data. Next, the trigger will execute. In the trigger, you are doing inserts 2 times. So first insert, there will be one record affected. Second insert, there will be one record affected. So you can see now 3 records being inserted instead of 1 now. The records being affected is 3, but you are updating only one record. But when you see these messages, you can see 3 records affected. Now I'll see select star from. Okay, test trigger log. When I do this, now it will get me the information. I have updated from C to D, right? C will be old, C, and the D will be new. Which user ID updated, which it is updated on this date this time. Okay, this is the way how the trigger works. Are you able to get my point? Okay, if I create the same trigger for different scenario, I can create it, and the same way I can add the code. See, you can use both the tables in all the scenarios. If I insert the table and I have written the trigger, I have used inserted table and updated table. So when you insert the record, by default the record will be only there in the inserted. Even though if you use the deleted, it's not an issue. You can use the deleted, but since the deleted will not have a record for insert table, when you insert a data, that will be only there in the insert. It will not be there in the deleted. So even though if you use the deleted table, it's fine. The record return will be 0. Okay, this is for insert. Next we'll go for one more called delete. Okay, delete. So what I'll do, I'll create a trigger. Create trigger. I'll name it as trg underscore. It is trigger temp test, right? Test test trg underscore delete on test trg instead. Okay, so basically it the same. We got the trigger as for trigger, right? This is nothing but the instead trigger. Okay, so I'll create an instead of delete. Okay, then as what I'll do, as I said, whenever you use instead of delete, so I've used the action type for the delete. So whenever you delete the data from the trigger table, the data will not be deleted. Automatically you'll come to this table and that will be inserted, like you can this is what, like whenever you create a trigger for delete operation instead of delete operation, then whenever you perform the delete operation on the table, that operation will not be performed on the table. Instead of that, this trigger will execute. So in the trigger I'll write it as, I'll print some message. No, you can't delete the data. Okay, go done. Now I have created a trigger. Good, we have created. Now what I'll do, I'll delete data from a table. Delete star from, what is the table name? Test trg. When I delete it, see, oh, see, you can't delete the data. And one more thing, one row affected. So let's see whether the data got deleted from the table or not. I've deleted the data, right? Let's say the data got deleted or not from this table. See, data is not deleted. Even though you delete the table, it will not be it will not allow you to delete the data. Why? Because you are creating instead of trigger. So what happens whenever you create an instead of trigger, instead of like, let's say you created instead of trigger for some action, instead of performing that action on the table, the trigger will execute. That's it. Are you able to get my point? Okay, so we are good with the triggers. I'll just give 2 minutes, just go and revise it. Okay, what is meant by trigger, what are types of triggers we have, what is the use of them. Two minutes. I'll be asked. So I'll give 2 minutes, like up to 8:55. I'll be back. Until then, I'll stop the video.